Doctor Who, The Adventures After, The Verge of Death, by Carole Ann Ford, with Rob Craine and Beth Axford. The Doctor was dying. Susan's grandfather was dying, under attack from his very protector. The Doctor, Susan, Ian and Barbara had just entered the TARDIS after a lengthy journey with Italian merchant and explorer Marco Polo. The ship had landed in the snowy Himalayas, where it had lost all functionality, and while exploring, they had encountered Polo and his fellow travellers. They were taken to Peking with the TARDIS, where the Doctor lost his ship to the mighty Kublai Khan in a game of backgammon. Polo ultimately decided to return the key to them, and the travellers couldn't be more relieved.
"I'm so glad to be back,"
Barbara sighed as she studied the majesty of the TARDIS, its roundel-covered walls, the doorways leading off into other parts of the ship, and of course the central console. She had done this many times, but she continued to be impressed by the ship, as if she was always seeing the interior again for the first time. "Yes, I couldn't agree more," Ian said, placing a comforting arm around Barbara's shoulders. He looked over to Susan, who seemed to be staring absently into the distance. Leaving Ping Cho after their recent travels had affected her more than she thought. She loved her grandfather, of course, and Ian and Barbara had now become great friends to Susan, but in Ping Cho she felt she had found a best friend, a soulmate. Of course, if Ping Cho had learned Susan's true age and history, she may not have believed her. But outwardly they shared the same youthful disposition and wonder at the world around them. Susan would miss her greatly. "Are you all right, Susan?" puzzled Ian. Susan snapped out of her trance.
"Yes, Ian, I'm fine. Sorry, I was miles away."
She attempted a smile to hide her feelings. The Doctor, meanwhile, was studying the console's instruments with a satisfied look on his face, and the three went over to join him. "Well, despite the ship's recent malfunction, it seems to be operating normally again. Interesting. Perhaps our lengthy absence allowed it to fix itself, He clasped his lapels in thought. "You speak as if it's a living thing, Doctor," Ian remarked. "Do I, young man?" the Doctor replied with a mischievous grin. He returned his attention to the console, and his smile turned into a frown. "Some of the readings seem to be a little erratic, though. Susan, my child, can you check the fault locator for me?"
"Yes, grandfather,"
replied Susan. Opposite the console was a large glass screen, and behind it a computer-lined wall where the fault locator was situated. She walked over and checked the readout.
"That's strange. It's saying there's something wrong with the helmet regulator."
"At least it's not the fluid link," said Ian, with a knowing look at the Doctor. "Yes, quite, Chesterton, quite," bristled the old man, as he knelt beneath the console. He muttered to himself while removing a cover from one of the sections. "Very strange indeed. I only just effected a repair. Now," he peered into the maze of circuitry and cables, "what seems to be—" Suddenly a cable sprung out from the compartment with a violent whipping sound and started to coil around his neck, tightening itself as it did so. The Doctor let out a cry and fell back, clasping his throat, trying to claw away the cable. "Doctor, what's wrong?" Ian shouted, as he and Barbara ran around to the other side of the console. They saw their friend writhing on the floor, vainly trying to grasp the thick wire, fighting for breath.
"Susan, help us!"
screamed Barbara.
"Grandfather!"
Susan gasped, as she hurried back towards her grandfather, joining Ian and Barbara as they tried to free him. The Doctor's face was starting to turn blue, and he was rapidly losing consciousness. The Doctor was dying. Susan's grandfather was dying. and the travellers seemed powerless to stop it. Suddenly, and as quickly as it had sprung to life, the cable went limp. "It's stopped!" shouted Ian, and the three frantically grabbed hold of the free end, attempting to wrestle it from around the doctor's neck. Barbara and Ian threw the cable to one side, while Susan knelt by her grandfather, hugging him tearfully, begging him to wake up. The doctor gave an almighty gasp and coughed violently, his eyes swinging open.
"Oh, grandfather, thank goodness!"
Susan said with relief.
"What happened?"
she demanded of Ian and Barbara, as the doctor, still coughing, indicated for her to help him sit up.
"We don't know,"
replied Barbara.
"One moment he was looking under the console, the next he was being strangled by that cable."
Though she'd seen the cable fall from her grandfather's neck, Susan stared at it in disbelief.
"I don't understand. How is that possible?"
The doctor was managing to breathe normally again, massaging his neck now. Barbara noticed a wheal on his skin where the cable had dug in tightly.
"Susan, can you fetch something to help him?" "Yes, of course,"
she replied. She looked warmly into the doctor's eyes.
"I'll be right back, grandfather."
The doctor nodded and continued rubbing his neck, muttering and mumbling as he slowly returned to his senses. Ian and Barbara knelt beside him, trying to comfort their friend despite their shock. Susan crossed the control room and opened the double doors that led to the living quarters, but as she was crossing the threshold, they promptly sprang back and slammed into her, throwing her across the floor. She landed on her back with a thud, banging her head, and let out a cry. Ian sprang up from where he was kneeling. He ran over to Susan and gently helped her to sit up. "Susan, are you all right?"
Yes, I think so,"
she replied, wincing in pain and rubbing the back of her head. Ian looked back at Barbara, who was still kneeling by the doctor's side. "What's going on?" he muttered under his breath, almost as if he was afraid that their attacker would hear him. "There's something wrong with this ship," the doctor replied with a tremble in his voice. He looked at Barbara. "My dear, would you kindly help me up? I must check the instruments."
"Are you sure, doctor? There's a nasty wound you have. We should dress it."
Yes, I'm fine, my dear. It will heal," he assured her. Barbara put her arms under the doctor's shoulders and eased him to his feet. Once upright, he held her hands gently and thanked her, before crossing over to the console to begin checking the dials for any evidence of what could be going on with his ship. Ian helped Susan up, and she joined her grandfather, still rubbing her head. Now back on her feet, Barbara frowned and rubbed her temples. A little unsteadily, she took herself over to the wooden colossus chair by the roundel-covered wall and sat down gingerly, continuing to massage her head. Ian noticed and went to comfort her, resting his hand on her shoulder. His worry was growing. Were they in danger inside the TARDIS? Their only place of complete safety?
"Sorry, Ian, I suddenly feel rather dizzy. A headache."
"I'm not at all surprised, Barbara," said the doctor, as he continued to study the instruments on the console. "This situation is most alarming. It's as if the ship is under some sort of attack. But from what?" He looked at his granddaughter, who shook her head.
"It's like—"
She looked at the console buttons.
"Like the TARDIS is attacking us, like before, when it was warning us about the faulty files return switch."
"This is more than a warning, child. With what just happened to us both, this is a threat." Ian could see that the doctor's and Susan's ominous words were affecting Barbara. She was bending forward, her head in her hands. "I think Barbara should go and have a lie down," Ian advised. The doctor looked at the schoolteachers. "Oh, yes, Chesterton, yes," he said. "Please go with her, and look after her. That would be most kind." And with that, he returned his attention to the console. Ian guided Barbara to the living quarters entrance. He hesitated for a moment, studying the doors. Were they about to strike again? Ian exchanged an anxious glance with Barbara. Taking a deep breath, he nervously pushed the doors. They opened normally. Beyond them he could see the welcoming sight of the living quarters beds, and breathed a sigh of relief. Back at the console, Susan and the doctor continued to study the instruments.
Everything seems to now be operating normally. No malfunctions.
He flicked a couple of switches as if testing the theory, and then clasped his lapels, deep in thought. The time rotor, the intricate glass cylinder at the heart of the console, rose and fell quietly as the ship continued its flight.
I think I need some water after that shock,
said Susan.
Now I imagine Barbara and Ian need something to eat. Nobody has had a proper meal in a while. No wonder Barbara felt faint.
Yes, quite, child,
said the doctor.
I think we could all do with a good rest, Things have been non-stop since we left Shoreditch.
He gazed around the console room.
You know, we haven't had the safety of the ship or even our home on Earth for a while now.
I'm surprised you think of Earth as home, Grandfather,
Susan remarked.
Well, it was for a while, Susan.
The doctor placed his arm around her shoulders.
Yes, we did our best to try and blend in, as it were, though perhaps—
He looked into Susan's eyes, gently cajoling her.
Perhaps trying to tell your history teacher that her facts were incorrect was not the best idea,
He chuckled, and she joined in with his laughter.
Come along, let's get something for Ian and Barbara to eat. You must be famished too.
Susan smiled at him, and they went across the console room. On the opposite side of the living quarters was another doorway, leading to a smaller room that contained the food machine. They both entered, but Susan went over to the food machine, while the doctor stayed by the entrance, keeping an eye on the console. The machine itself was a large box-like structure, with an array of lights on the top, small selector switches in the middle, and two large dials dominating the center. It was capable of producing nutritional bars in the flavor of any chosen meal. Susan switched on the machine and began turning the two dials.
I don't know if I prefer the vegetable soups we ate on Gallifrey or the earth meals I used to eat. Colville School did the loveliest casseroles, and not forgetting Barbara's favourite, bacon and eggs.
She laughed, feeling hungrier the more she thought about food.
Indeed, or Ian's preferred dish, roast beef and Yorkshire pudding,
said the doctor with a smile.
Oh yes, that was delicious too,
agreed Susan, as she continued to press the various switches, unable to decide what she wanted. Suddenly, the doctor looked around him with a puzzled frown.
That's strange. It seems to be getting a touch warmer.
He adjusted his shirt collar as the temperature began to climb. Susan stepped back from the device and considered the room.
You're right. I thought it was the machine warming up, but yes, it's getting hot. Very hot.
She fanned herself with her hand.
Grandfather, what is happening?
I don't know, child.
Beads of sweat were now forming on their skin.
Perhaps—
The food machine interrupted the doctor's thought with some low, clunking noises. Susan and the doctor exchanged baffled glances. The sounds then started to grow in volume, and the machine began to vibrate. Susan edged towards it, reaching out her hand.
Be careful, child,
warned the doctor, as a plume of smoke erupted from the device, along with a jet of water.
Look out!
Susan screamed, and they both ducked down. Susan did not make it unscathed, letting out a cry and gripping her left hand in pain.
What is it, child? What's wrong?
The doctor shouted, rushing to his granddaughter. Susan showed him her injury, which was bright red.
My hand! It burned my hand!
Her face contorted in agony.
Oh, Grandfather, I'm scared!
The doctor examined it, his brow furrowing in a mixture of confusion and worry.
Oh, dear child, let me fetch you a dressing.
He moved over to one of the roundels set into the wall and opened it carefully. There was a small cavity inside, and nestled within a box. He opened it to reveal items of first aid, including a small canister, bandage, and dressing tape.
"Here, Susan, give me your hand."
He took it gently and pressed the top of the canister, which emitted a small spray onto her hand. Susan gave a deep sigh of relief.
"Now hold it still, and I'll apply the bandage."
Something is wrong, grandfather,
Susan said worriedly.
"I know, child,"
said the doctor with a sigh.
"After everything we've been through, this really is becoming most disturbing."
Once he'd finished bandaging her hand, he placed the first aid box back behind the Randall, and then turned to study the room.
"Since leaving Gallifrey, we have always thought of the TARDIS as our home. The ship has been our place of safety, the haven we could always return to at times of great peril. Now it is attacking us and making it something we fear. Why, Why?"
He looked at Susan and held out his hands, as if encouraging her to offer an explanation. Susan began pacing the room.
It's like I said earlier. The TARDIS has been acting strangely ever since we left Skaro.
"I hope it's nothing more than a malfunction, Susan. Something the consul just hasn't detected yet,"
said the doctor. He tried to adopt a more reassuring tone.
"The ship has them from time to time, and although this one is indeed something far more serious, I'm sure I can solve it."
But, grandfather,
Susan replied sharply.
remember last time? The ship acted strangely, and we found the doors open. Things have been right ever since. You see, I don't think it is a malfunction. It's as if someone got in here and has been messing with the controls. Someone or something.
The living quarters was a room of medium size, with a wardrobe against one wall, a table and chair against the other, and a chest of drawers in the corner. The beds were like beach loungers, rectangular single units with sheets, covers, and pillows that shifted into the walls when not in use. Ian had cleverly arranged for two of these to come down from the wall, so that Barbara could use them as a double bed, where she was currently sitting up, resting. "How are you feeling now?" Ian asked, trying to remain calm.
I suddenly felt so tired.
Barbara replied.
Tired and dizzy. Something just came over me. It's like nothing I've experienced before.
"I'm sure it'll pass," Ian tried to reassure her. "I mean, let's face it. We've been through an awful lot. One minute it's just another day at Coal Hill School, then the next we're thrown into time and space travel." He looked around the room. "And we're living in a police box." Ian laughed at the absurdity of it all. "You'll be fine. You just need a good rest. We all need a good rest."
Yes, you're probably right,
agreed Barbara.
No wonder I am exhausted. We've been with the doctor and Susan only a few weeks, yet it feels like we've lived several lifetimes.
Ian chuckled, nodding his head. "Do you think Susan's all right?"
Do you think Susan is all right?
"What makes you ask that?" said Ian.
Oh, she seemed so distant when we left. I think saying goodbye to Ping Cho, well, I think she's going to miss her. They had become such good friends. I was happy for her, considering she didn't have many friends at Coal Hill, if any come to that.
She stopped, deep in reflection. "Barbara, she must be used to it," Ian said. "Don't forget that before we met them, the Doctor and Susan had been travelling for a while. They must have had countless adventures, met all kinds of people. I'm sure many left their marks on them both."
Yes,
countered Barbara.
But they were on Earth for such a long time before we joined them. Susan must have had some sense of feeling settled, and then we came along and made them leave in such a hurry. I know Susan loves travelling among the stars, but the journey with Polo was one of the longest times we've spent with anyone. It was clear Susan and Ping Cho adored each other's company. She must miss that.
"Susan will be fine. I promise you that, Barbara. She's as tough as old boots." Ian laughed. "And I tell you something else." His voice suddenly trailed off.
"What is it?"
asked Barbara, scanning the room. Ian started rubbing his arms up and down. "I don't know about you, but I'm suddenly feeling rather cold," he replied. Barbara looked at him in confusion.
"I don't feel anything."
Ian got up and walked around the living quarters. "No, the temperature! The temperature is definitely dropping." He looked over at Barbara, baffled. "I'm surprised you can't feel it." He started rubbing his arms more vigorously, the chill getting to him. "Maybe the controls have malfunctioned again."
"No, Oh!"
Barbara suddenly lay back on her bed. "Barbara, what's happening?"
I'm suddenly feeling dizzy again.
Barbara's voice fizzled away into a mumble. "Yes, it'll be the cold," said Ian. He looked around the room. "It's almost freezing in here. I'll get you a blanket." He walked over to a cupboard inside the wall and searched through it. Nothing. Can't be. He checked the wardrobe. Nothing again. Frustrated, he crossed the room to the chest of drawers and opened each in turn. One contained a selection of books, another held a series of trinkets, and various objets d'art filled the drawer at the bottom. There was nothing of any help, and the temperature was plummeting rapidly. "There must be someone somewhere." He looked again at his weakening friend. "It's all right, Barbara. I'll go and fetch the doctor. He'll know where they are, and hopefully he can fix the temperature." He walked over to the huge square doors, and just as he was about to exit the living quarters, they suddenly slammed in his face. "What is going on?" Ian exclaimed. He tried them once again, pushing and pulling the doorknobs with all his might, but they remained resolutely shut.
"Ian, what is it?"
Barbara asked, her voice sounding weaker. "They won't open," Ian said, with panic rising. He turned to Barbara. "We're locked in." Back in the room containing the food machine, the temperature was continuing to rise. The doctor was leaning against the wall, distressed, his jacket and waistcoat strewn on the floor. His collar was open, his necktie undone and askew, and he was mopping his face and brow to no avail. Susan was lying in a heap on the opposite side of the room, breathing rapidly. The doctor's voice was faint, but he tried with all his strength he could to muster, to call out to his friends, "Barbara! Ian! Where are you? Can you hear me? Help! We need help!" Pushing himself unsteadily off the wall, the doctor staggered over to the door to find it closed. He tried in vain to open it, but it was locked. He turned his back to the door and leaned against it, looking across the room to Susan. She was beginning to pass out. "I'm sorry, child. I don't know what to do," he whispered, gasping for breath. "We're trapped." And that was the final thing Susan heard before everything went black. "I don't understand it," said Ian. "The door won't budge, and it's so cold." Barbara was struggling with the plummeting temperature, and had curled herself up on the bed in an attempt to keep warm. The surfaces in the living quarters had now begun to show an icy film, and the Coal Hill teachers could see their breath hanging in the air. Their voices were beginning to shake. "Maybe Susan was right," Barbara said through chattering teeth. "In what way?" asked Ian.
"Before we came in here to rest, remember what she said? That it feels the same as before, when the TARDIS went haywire. Something might have entered the ship."
"Yes," agreed Ian. "She did. Maybe she was right. The doors were open."
"Ian, all of this, it's like before, but more sinister. The ship attacking us in this way."
Ian went over to the bed and sat beside her again. "Yes, I know what you mean. Last time the ship was warning us. It was our friend, our ally, and that was the only way it knew to alert us. But He shuddered at the memory. "Susan. She threatened me with those scissors." Ian looked around the room. "In here? That can't have been part of the ship's warning to us. What she did, or what she tried to do, that was part of something else. And that something else must still be here."
But what does it want, do you think?
Barbara tried to hug the bed, still attempting to warm up. Ian rose shivering and walked to the door. "I don't know, Barbara, but one thing's for sure," he gasped as he felt the cold. "It doesn't want us here." Feeling weak, Ian banged on the door for a moment. "Oh, what's the use? Why can't they hear us? Why don't they come and get us? What if something else has happened to them too?"
Why can't they hear us? Why don't they come and get us? What if something's happened to them too?
said Barbara, attempting to sound brave, but stifling a cry. Giving the door one final futile thud, Ian shivered violently. The temperature was still dropping, and he could hardly move. His breath hung like a heavy fog in the air. He steadily returned to Barbara's bed. "Come on," he said shakily. He slowly helped Barbara to sit up, and then put his arms around her. "We need to try and stay warm." Ian and Barbara stayed huddled together, their breath more laboured with every inhale and exhale. Then slowly they fell into unconsciousness. Susan saw a fog, a very different fog to the icy one that was wrapping itself around Ian and Barbara. This fog was rich and textured, imbued with a deep orange hue that she immediately recognized. It began to thin into a mist, and through the haze she could make out many shapes, some tall, some short, and some more broad than others. The orange radiated from above as if painting them all. Then the picture crystallized. There was a sweeping mountain range under an orange sky, and embedded in the center, a majestic castle-like structure enclosed in a glass dome. It was the Capitol on Gallifrey. Susan was home. The picture suddenly dissolved like a rippling lake, and reformed into a new image. A large regal room with ornate decorations and substantial windows looking out onto the mountains. Susan looked around and saw people sitting in chairs all her own age, wearing the same black and white robes the student uniform at the Time Academy. She was in her classroom at school. In the centre was a large hologram of the planets surrounding Gallifrey, and standing next to it was an older woman wearing traditional Time Lord high-collared robes. Susan remembered the woman well. It was Principal Flavia, her mentor and the most respected teacher at the Academy, who turned from the holographic display and focused on Susan with a look of deep concern.
"You are in danger, Susan. You are all in danger. A force threatens to destroy you, your grandfather, and your friends. You must fight it."
The frown on her face vanished, replaced by a confident smile.
"But you know that. Your unconscious mind has brought you home, back to Gallifrey. However, I am not here to teach you. My purpose is to remind you of the strength that lies deep within you, the strength that was."
She paused, and gave her next words more emphasis.
"So apparent in your time at the Academy. Use it, Susan, and trust in yourself. You will succeed."
Suddenly the view of her mentor and classroom took on a darker hue as a new fog surrounded it, framing its edges. But unlike the welcoming mist that had taken Susan to Gallifrey, this was more threatening, crackling with lightning, as if trying to overcome her mind. She tried to ask her mentor what it was, but the view of her classroom faded. It briefly unnerved her, but Principal Flavia's words echoed through her mind. The fog crackled again, then faded, and her view changed to a different classroom, another that she recognized immediately. It was Coal Hill School. Standing at the front of the class were the figures of Ian and Barbara. Their voices were faint, but it looked like they were teaching a history class. Once the vision came into focus, it was clear that the teachers were talking to Susan directly.
Susan, I know you felt like an outsider at school, that you found it difficult to blend in and find friends,
said Barbara.
And I'm sorry that Ian and I viewed you with that same curiosity,
she added, an apologetic tone to her voice. We knew you were intelligent, but we didn't realize how brave you were, said Ian triumphantly. Going to prehistoric Earth and inspiring us to escape from the Cave of Skulls. Then our encounter with the Daleks on Skaro. You went back to the TARDIS in that terrifying jungle, all on your own, to fetch the drugs that saved our lives. Barbara's voice was soft.
And then your friendship with Ping Cho. I know it truly warmed your heart. She was facing such a personal dilemma.
Her voice rose as her championing of Susan became stronger.
You challenged Polo and Tagana when they tried to arrange her marriage to an elderly man. You defended her with all your might. She wanted none of it, but couldn't find the strength she needed to fight her corner. But you did. You helped her to be a stronger person. So much so that instead of returning home to Samarkand, she decided to stay in Peking and forge a new life for herself. She would never have had that confidence if she hadn't met you.
Susan, school isn't just a place where you learn facts, said Ian. It's where you build character and confidence. The means to face life and challenge it, when life does it all to challenge you. And since you have got to know you, to really know you, we understand why you came top in every class. You know more about Earth's history than Barbara. You know more about science than I ever will. You are a truly remarkable young woman, a real problem solver.
Yes, I couldn't agree more,
said Barbara.
Susan, we are now in a place of great threat, but you must stop your fear from taking over. You have one of the most impressive, intelligent brains we've ever encountered. You must use it. I mean, really use it.
Ian nodded. Your mind can overcome anything. Susan's science teacher punched his left hand into his right palm for added emphasis. Barbara indicated the classroom.
At Coal Hill, you're an alien, so very different from everyone else. But do you let it stop you? No, and you never must.
Barbara's right, said Ian. Susan, we must now leave you. Please, dig deep into your mind and use your strength. You can save us all. Me, Barbara, your grandfather. You can do it, Susan. Now go.
But I want to stay here with you,
pleaded Susan.
I feel safe here.
But even as those words left her mouth, the view of the classroom began to shimmer and fade, and the threatening mist started to appear again. The lightning crackles were more intense this time.
We will be in contact again soon,
Barbara's voice said faintly, before she, Ian, and the room disappeared. Contact. The Time Lord ability to communicate telepathically. Barbara had emphasized the word. What were they trying to tell her? The fog and lightning dominated Susan's vision, but this time it felt different, like it was alive, like it was annoyed and angry. Perhaps the reassuring words Susan had heard were maddening it somehow. As her unconscious mind pondered this, the mist vanished and she was confronted with a new vision. She was back in Cathay, at the way station courtyard, standing next to the pond. She felt a presence by her side. Turning to face it, she was greeted by the smiling face of Ping Cho. Susan suddenly felt the warmest glow overcome her. She was so happy to see her friend again, even though they hadn't long said goodbye.
You are the wicked goldfish,
said Ping Cho. reminding her of their earlier conversation in the courtyard.
"Oh, Pincho, I can't tell you how happy I am that you are here,"
Susan exclaimed, hugging her friend.
"and soon I will be in Peking, my new home. I know, Susan, that you are far away from home, but the TARDIS has everything you need, your grandfather, Ian, and Barbara. But you must act quickly, or you are in danger of losing everything you hold dear, your home and your family."
Susan nodded, understanding the importance of everything her friend was telling her. Pincho took Susan's hands and gazed directly into her eyes.
"Susan, always remember, you are a time lady. Something is trying to contact you, something bad.
There it was again. Contact.
It wants to...
She paused, as if choosing her words carefully.
It wants to take control, to take everything from you. But your mind has solved many challenges, and you will solve this one. I believe in you, wicked goldfish."
She smiled again at Susan, who was trying to find the right words. But spontaneously, as if in a fit of anger, the mist reappeared, obliterating the vision from Susan's eyes. She was saddened to say goodbye to her friend again, but quickly stiffened her resolve. A battle of wills was developing, and she was determined not to display weakness. Another figure began to appear through the fog, dressed in a familiar cape, white striped scarf, and astrakhan hat. The figure unfolded the cape from around its body, and swept away the threatening clouds. As the mist evaporated, the vision sharpened, and Susan found herself back in the junkyard at 76 Totters Lane, full of all the bric-a-brac she remembered, broken mannequins, painting frames, worn chairs. And there, at the middle of it all, was the familiar face of her grandfather. The TARDIS was in its usual spot, but there were glowing lightning marks across its doors.
"Grandfather!"
Susan exclaimed.
"I was beginning to think I'd never see you again. I was so worried."
She could see that he was trying to say something to her, but there was only silence.
"What, Grandfather? I can't hear you."
His lips moved again, but no sound emerged. Susan shook her head in frustration. The doctor looked confused and irritated. Was this directed at her? He tried moving forward to his granddaughter, and she started walking towards him, but the crackling mist quickly formed a barrier between them. It clearly did not want them to reunite, even in her unconscious mind. He began fading in and out, trying to call out to her, but it was all in vain. Both he and the junkyard vanished, replaced by the fog and lightning bolts which now surrounded Susan. She clutched her head. A memory flooded her mind, and she could see herself threatening Ian with a pair of scissors. She shut her eyes and screamed in pain.
"No, I won't! I won't!"
The pain abruptly stopped. She looked up. The mist and crackling lightning were still there, but seemed to fade as a new outline emerged. This one was bolder and brighter than the other visions, and it was fighting the fog for domination of Susan's view. A huge smile erupted on her face as the figure came into focus. It was Susan herself, dressed in the regal time lady robes she'd worn at her graduation. A long, flowing golden cloak with a high collar that always made her neck hurt, much to her irritation and her grandfather's amusement. It was a day she remembered with pride.
"Hello, Susan,"
said the dream version of herself.
"I haven't got long. Why do you think the creature is targeting you?"
Fresh clarity rushed into Susan's subconscious, because the dream version of herself was breaking through all the barriers her mind had created. She realized that the mysterious being thought it could possess and control her. It thought Susan was an easy target. She understood now. The creature was young, still in its adolescence, and it thought Susan was the same. Yes, Susan was still young, but her Gallifreyan mind gave her a mature essence that the being lacked. Because it thought Susan was as vulnerable, it made her threaten Ian with scissors in the living quarters. She had the courage not to hurt her friend, but the creature had made her angry and violent. which she managed to direct away from Ian. With this new understanding, Susan now knew that she could overcome it. She may have been young, but she was strong and intelligent. Her mind had been busy trying to remind her of this. It was all making sense now. The broken fast return switch caused the ship's doors to open in flight, but it didn't cause the chaos in the TARDIS, and the ship malfunctioning in the Himalayas. It was this creature, this being. All this time hiding away in the TARDIS while they were travelling with Marco Polo. All this time immersing itself in the ship's circuitry, feeding off its energy. All this time building up its strength. All this time. The voice of Dream Susan broke through again. Susan focused on the vision of herself as it spoke. The mist and lightning continuing to crackle violently around her. The truth of the creature was laid bare, its plans revealed. It was now reacting like an annoyed child.
Just as everyone has told you, you can help yourself. You are strong enough on your own, just as you are.
Susan continued to listen in earnest.
You have skill that displayed itself at a very young age, something Principal Flavia observed. Contact. You can do so much with your mind. Telepathically communicate with other beings, override memories, wipe minds, change thoughts. You have an incredible power to use for good.
Susan understood. It was up to her now. Susan's dream self vanished, leaving just the misty fog. It had grown thicker, the lightning flashes violent and bright, as if it was goading her, gloating, challenging. Empowerment overcame Susan, dominating her subconscious. She could hear her inner voice shouting in her mind, screaming in the mist as it reared up in all its malevolence.
No, you will not win! You'll never win!
The voice was no longer in her mind. It was inside the TARDIS. She had screamed those words aloud. Susan blinked rapidly and shook her head as she woke from her unconscious state. Her eyes slowly focused, and she scanned her surroundings. She was back in the room with the food machine. Across from her, slumped on the floor, was her grandfather. He was still unconscious. It was still hot, but not to her surprise she felt alert, full of motivation. Susan connected the dots. The being had infiltrated the central console and had used it to manipulate the ship. She now knew what she had to do. Slowly she gathered all her strength and crawled across to her grandfather. He needed to be awake. She shook him.
Grandfather!
She tried again, stronger this time.
Grandfather!
The doctor's head turned slowly.
What? Who's there?
It's me, Grandfather. I need you to wake up.
What, Susan?
Eyes suddenly wide, he studied the room, confused.
Listen carefully.
Susan concentrated hard. She needed to make him understand, and quickly.
Something has taken control of the ship. Some kind of telepathic entity. We need to get to the console and communicate with the TARDIS. We need to make contact. Draw it out, remember, Grandfather? Not only can we share thoughts and memories, but we can destroy them too.
Yes,
replied the doctor. He nodded, his senses becoming more alert.
We need to work together with the ship to bring the creature out and erase it from existence. Telepathically destroy it.
Yes, child. Yes, I understand,
replied the doctor.
It's a brilliant plan, but we must be careful. We don't know what it's capable of. It could reverse the process and overpower us.
No, Grandfather, I don't think it can. It's not strong enough yet. It's still so young.
The doctor looked baffled.
What do you mean?
Susan smiled at him.
I'll explain later. Just trust me for now. I've always been good at making telepathic contact, and with both our minds joined together, working with the TARDIS, we can do anything.
Are you sure, my dear? This could be very dangerous for both of us.
The doctor warned.
Yes, Grandfather. We have no other choice.
The doctor pondered for a few seconds, then attempted to rise. He faltered. Susan gently helped the doctor to his feet. The room was still hot. and their breathing was laboured, but there was a renewed determination in them both.
"But how do we get out?"
asked the doctor.
"The door is locked."
Susan tried the door, which to her relief opened.
"It must have thought it had won. It's letting its guard down. Come on."
With new vigour, the pair entered the cavernous console room, noticing the difference immediately.
"The temperature!"
the doctor exclaimed.
"It's normal. Thank goodness!"
He laughed in celebration. Susan looked around the room.
"Quick, grandfather," she said. "You'll notice we've escaped."
The doctor nodded and followed Susan over to the control console. They each placed a hand on the nearest panel. Looking at each other resolutely, they closed their eyes.
"Contact,"
said Susan.
"Contact,"
the doctor confirmed. It was as if a lightning bolt had jolted into their hands, a burst of extraordinary charge. They concentrated hard on directing the energy through themselves and into the ship's innermost being. There was a pause of a few seconds, and then a tremor ripped through the console. As it grew in momentum, the lights on the console panels began to flash furiously, and the hands on the meters swung back and forth. The switches threw themselves up and down in a manic pattern. Lights started to pulse violently behind the rounded walls surrounding the console room. And then came a twisted noise, a strained version of the ship's engine groan, sounding almost as if it was in pain. The TARDIS was being bombarded, not only by the doctor's and Susan's mental energy, which was assailing its circuitry, but also by the stowaway creature. The being had been disturbed. It was fighting back. The ship was now in the centre of a war. The doctor cried out. Contact was a process he rarely found himself using, and it was clear that his body and mind were finding it all too much.
"Be strong, grandfather. Push harder. We can do this,"
shouted Susan, her eyes still clasped shut. She was concentrating harder than she had ever had in her life. Suddenly the creature's energy seemed to dissipate, and they felt it moving away from the console. They both opened their eyes cautiously. The controls continued to act manically, but black smoke was now rising from the centre of the ship, enveloping them. It was twisting and swirling, peppered with bolts of lightning, crackled with fierce intensity. This was the creature in its true form, the thing that Susan had seen in her dreams, the thing that had taken over their home. The doctor took his hand off the panel, feeling they had won that part of the battle. He took a moment to study the space around them, concentrating hard on the being. He had never seen anything like it before, and was mindful that it could attack him again at any moment, but still that sense of wonderment he felt when encountering new species was something he'd had within him since childhood, never more so than now.
"Grandfather, stay with me,"
Susan shouted, and then closed her eyes again. A mighty jolt slammed into her mind, and nearly knocking her off her feet. Her hand dropped from the panel. She soon realized that she had joined telepathically with the creature, and now, rather than just looking at its embodiment, she was getting a true sense of what it was capable of, how it felt, and how it thought. She knew from her visions that it was in its adolescence, but only now did she realize just how young it was. That's why it had attached itself to her before. It was like a frightened child, alone in a cold and empty universe. The only instinct it had possessed was survival, at whatever cost. That's all it knew. That's why it latched onto the ship. It thought Susan could help it, that they shared the same traits. For a brief moment, Susan started to feel sorry for the being. She noticed the thick black smoke was growing pale, and the lightning bolts were weakening, as if the creature knew its actions were wrong, and was now feeling repentant. Susan felt sympathy towards the thing. She wondered if perhaps she and the creature could come to some sort of understanding. As Susan focused on this thought, a new violent blast of energy erupted from the smoke. It threw her to the floor, dazing her. As she recovered, she realized she had been deceived. She had tried to show pity, but the being had decided this was a moment of weakness, and had mustered more malicious energy in a renewed attempt to destroy her. For a moment Susan was angry. She thought about lashing out, fighting, punching, screaming, and kicking. Like a child, she clutched her head and screwed up her eyes. But then her subconscious mind reached back out to her. In the smoke in her mind she saw flashes of memories from her visions. Flavia, Ian, Barbara, Ping Cho, all fighting their way through the mist, reminding Susan of her strength one final time. Then her grandfather's face appeared above them, dominating the vision, but with a wide, reassuring smile. He hadn't been able to communicate with Susan earlier, but his warm expression said everything. All their faces told her what she now must do. The creature feeds off energy, she thought, electrical and telepathic. Eyes still closed, Susan remembered her dark thoughts, her fears that she was a poor student, that she wasn't good enough. She remembered the students in her Coal Hill School class laughing and mocking when Ian had asked her what the fifth dimension was, and she replied, space. The terrifying thought that her grandfather might not be proud of her. All the anxiety she'd faced when trying to fight or fit in back in Earth. And though her recent travels and the visions from her friends had proved that her fears were completely unfounded, it didn't mean those fears would simply evaporate. The pain stayed with her, and she didn't know if it would ever go away. Now she needed to use it to fight back. Focusing on her subconscious, Susan hadn't noticed the cloud in the ship begin to shrink, twisting and turning as it did so, reshaping, reforming. The doctor was also oblivious, the efforts of the last few moments temporarily sapping his strength. He was leaning against the console, which had now calmed down, and was attempting to recover. A grey glow began to emanate from the creature, growing and expanding, enveloping the small crackles of lightning like waves washing away seaweed on a shore. Within the grey, a hint of blue began to grow, but then fractured into smaller pieces within the mist. A new form was starting to emerge. A black base with a grey skirt like middle, covered with small blue balls. Then on top of that, a section on which two arms were situated, one with a black rubber sucker at its end, and the other a menacing metal rod weapon. A grid encircled the upper section of the thing, before finishing at a dome-like head, with a single eye stalk protruding from its centre. Small light bulbs sat on top of the dome on either side of its eye. "Exterminate!" The doctor looked up and saw his enemy, fear etched across his face. He quickly scanned the room for his granddaughter, and saw her sitting on the floor, eyes shut tightly.
"Susan! Come to, child!"
Susan shook her head, and coming to her senses,
"A Dalek? But how?"
she exclaimed. "It must have smuggled itself aboard the ship before we left Skaro. Quick, child, run!"
Susan scrambled to her feet, and the doctor grabbed her arm, attempting to pull her across the console room. The Dalek glided across the floor towards them, and they ran to the living quarters doors, but they wouldn't open. Pummeling on the doors, the pair shouted for Ian and Barbara, but it was no use. They were trapped. "Surrender, or you will be destroyed," it cried in its harsh metallic voice.
"No, grandfather!"
cried Susan, resisting her attempts to escape. She looked back at the Dalek.
"Can't you see? It's an illusion. It's attacking our minds, showing us what we fear."
"You will obey the Daleks," screamed the metal warrior.
"No!"
Susan shouted.
"You're not real!"
She took a deep breath, screwed her eyes shut, and placed her fingers at her temples. With a burst of mental energy, she gathered up all the pain she could feel, and with a scream, launched it at the hateful creature in front of her. There was a violent tremor, and the Dalek let out a cry. Susan opened her eyes, and saw it beginning to shimmer away. She had stunned the creature. The Dalek began to fade, but as it did so, the ominous black cloud was re-emerging, its lightning bolts crackling. It was returning to its true form for a final battle. Susan turned again to her grandfather, who was viewing her with a look of pride. Their eyes met, and he nodded briefly. He walked across to her, and they stood together, taking each other's hand. They closed their eyes tightly, and in unison, "Contact!" A joint burst of telepathic energy left them, penetrating deep into the mist, which shook again at the intrusion. But this time it was different. There was a sense of defeat rather than strength. The doctor and Susan opened their eyes. The lightning bolts were making a feeble attempt to crackle, but growing smaller. A glow shone within the fog, devouring the dark and treacherous clouds. As the glow grew brighter, Susan and the doctor held their hands up to shield their eyes. There was what sounded like a final cry of fury from within the mist, or perhaps it was a scream of pain. Finally, the being gave a last explosion of energy and vanished. The doctor and Susan lowered their hands and looked around the room, triumphant and astonished.
"Grandfather, we did it!"
Susan cried.
"Yes, my dear child," replied the doctor. "It would certainly seem so."
The pair hugged each other tightly.
"Oh, I'm so proud of you, Susan. Although, of course, I knew all along how we could defeat the creature."
He couldn't see Susan's face as she rolled her eyes. But then she smiled to herself. Classic grandfather, she thought fondly. They left the embrace, and he held her shoulders, looking into her eyes.
"All jesting aside, Susan, I can't begin to tell you how proud I am."
Susan firmly shook her head.
"Grandfather, it was both of us."
The doctor smiled.
"That may be so, but it was your solution."
A firm expression then set upon his face.
"Now listen to me, child. You are brilliant. You always have been. I've lost count of the number of times I needed your help, and you were the only one who could help."
Susan looked down at her grandfather's words, as her grandfather's words sunk in.
"And I know I can be a little harsh with you from time to time," he added, "but it's only because I care about you. I believe in you. I always saw so much promise in you, even during our days on Gallifrey. Why do you think I wanted to take you with me? I saw such intelligence, so much maturity even then. I felt you deserved to see the wonders of the universe,"
he added with a chuckle.
"As much as I."
Susan looked up, grinning.
"And long may that continue."
They were interrupted by a noise from across the room. The door to living quarters was opening, and Ian's voice came from it. "Barbara, it's open! The door is unlocked! We're free!" he cried. Ian and Barbara entered the control room, looking rather dazed and confused. They rushed over to Susan and the doctor, and the travellers hugged each other.
"What happened to you both?"
Barbara asked. "Yes, the door locked. We were screaming and shouting for you," Ian said, frustration in his voice.
"The ship was invaded by a creature. We were trapped in the food machine room. It was boiling hot in there,"
Susan replied. "What?" Ian said. "It can't have been. We were freezing."
"The TARDIS was being manipulated by a telepathic being. It affected the temperature, made the ship attack us,"
the doctor explained.
"He was trying to drain the ship of its energy and kill us all,"
Susan added. Ian and Barbara scanned the console room, anxiety on their faces.
"Don't worry, it is gone.
Said Susan.
Forever."
"Defeated by a remarkable piece of ingenuity on Susan's part,"
said the doctor.
"Oh, Susan."
Barbara could see the exhaustion on the girl's face, and enveloped her in a hug.
"How are you both?"
asked the doctor. "It was touch and go for a while there, Doctor," said Ian. "Barbara wasn't well, and then it started getting colder. I won't lie, I was terribly worried about her." The Time Lord nodded his head in understanding. "But she seems all right now, thank goodness. Well done, both." He gave the doctor a warm pat on the back. "You got rid of the blasted thing.
"Yes, quite, dear boy, quite,"
the doctor laughed.
"Now, please excuse me. I must check the controls and make sure there's no permanent damage."
The doctor crossed over to the console, followed by the others. He surveyed the instruments.
"Yes, a few bumps and bruises here and there, but nothing that can't be remedied,"
he remarked, the relief apparent in his voice. "Well, after everything we've been through, I think we could all do with a holiday," said Ian.
I think the ship could do with one as well,
added Barbara. Ian chuckled. "How about a nice beach holiday, eh, Doctor?" he said. "Sun, sand, sea, and a nice long drink."
replied the doctor, deep in thought. "A pleasant idea, Justin. Very pleasant indeed."
He looked over at Susan with a twinkle in his eye.
"Let's see what we can do, eh?
But this time we'll make sure we shut the doors firmly behind us,"
added Susan, and her fellow travellers laughed in agreement. Susan Foreman smiled at her grandfather, pleased to be safe once again inside her time-travelling home.